Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Tuan is enjoying peaceful moments with lytudiem as his memories slowly return, and he begins to feel the warmth of her love. Everything seems to be falling back into place, and the wounds in his soul are starting to heal. But when lytudiem leaves, a familiar figure appears from the distance. It's Tuan's mother, the woman he doesn't recognize. He looks at her, but his mind is filled with questions, confusion, not understanding why she's here and why he can't remember anything about her. Tuan's mother, who cannot accept the love her son has for lytudiem, has arrived with harsh threats. She loves him, but her control and rigidity have pushed Tuan into an unavoidable crossroads. The words she says, the decisions she makes, force him to face a difficult choice: family or love. What will Tuan do? But why is she here, right now? Wasn't she supposed to be arrested by the police? Has Tuan's mother really escaped from the authorities? Stay tuned to discover the truth behind her shocking return and the mysteries that neither Tuan nor the audience could have anticipated. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next intense and surprising twists. The old woman's house is hidden deep within a dense garden. Tuan sits on a weathered bamboo chair, staring blankly into the space before him, his hand gently brushing his arm, his eyes heavy with exhaustion and worry. In his mind, fragmented memories swirl, moments from the past that continue to haunt him, but they fade away, unclear. He doesn't remember anything about himself, his past, and he certainly doesn't recognize the person standing in front of him. Everything around him feels blurry, like a never-ending nightmare. All he knows is that he's trying to retrieve a part of his memory, but everything slips away too quickly. Suddenly, a figure appears in the distance, walking down the narrow stone path leading into the yard. At first, Tuan doesn't notice, but as the figure comes closer and stops in front of him, it becomes clear. A woman stands there, her hair as white as snow, her eyes cold and sharp like steel, her hands thin yet strong. Tuan looks up at her, but there's no recognition, no understanding of who she is. She stands still for a moment, then suddenly raises her hand. Without warning, without preparation, she strikes Tuan across the face with a force that echoes like thunder. The slap leaves him stunned and disoriented. Tuan can only sit there, unable to react, his vision blurring, a wave of dizziness overwhelming him. He doesn't understand why, doesn't know who she is, or why she's doing this to him. The woman stands in front of him, without a word of apology or explanation, just staring at him with a cold, emotionless gaze. Tuan raises his hand to his face, feeling the sharp pain from the slap spread across his cheek. But the physical pain doesn't hurt as much as the confusion and emptiness inside him. Why is she doing this? Why is she here like this? His mother looks at him, her eyes filled with anger and disappointment. Without an ounce of sympathy, she begins to speak. Do you think you can continue living like this? I've spent my whole life raising you, taking care of you, and yet you threw it all away. You're no longer worthy of being my son. Her voice is firm, without any softness, each word cutting deep into his heart. Tuan can only sit there, his head spinning. Everything feels like a violent wave crashing over him, pulling him under, uncontrollable. He can't remember who she is. He can't understand the bitterness in her voice. He stares at her, his eyes wide, but he can't find the words to speak. She doesn't stop, continuing with cruel words. If you don't leave lytudiem, I will give you nothing. No house, no company, nothing at all. Everything you have, I will take from you. You're not worthy of my help. You're not worthy to live in this family anymore. Tuan's mother doesn't give him time to respond. Her voice grows colder, sharper. I'm done being patient. If you don't change, don't expect anything from me again. If you want to live like this, there's no place for you in this family. I'll kick you out of the company, and from now on, you're no longer my son. Tuan remains silent, his eyes clouded with dizziness. He doesn't know what to do, doesn't know how to react. Her words echo in his head like a siren signaling the end. He feels an overwhelming despair rising within him. Everything inside him feels like it's falling apart. There's nothing left to hold on to. Her words keep coming, relentless, as if she wants to stab them into his heart, making him feel worthless. I'll send people to beat you if you don't listen. You've disappointed me too many times, and I won't forgive you anymore. At this point, Tuan can only clutch his head and fall to his knees on the ground. The pain, both physical and emotional, makes it impossible for him to stand. His hands clutch at his hair, as if trying to free himself from the agony his mother has just inflicted. Memories start to flood back, but they are blurry, unclear. He feels like he's living in a world with no escape, with no one to help him. Tuan's mother stands there, her gaze unwavering, as if she has already made her decision. She doesn't wait for any reply, doesn't need an explanation. All she wants is for him to listen, to leave Lytudiem and come back to the family. Or else she will abandon him forever. Tuan can no longer speak. He can only kneel there, his head spinning, his heart filled with despair. Everything inside him feels shattered, and there's nothing left to keep him from falling apart. Tuan collapsed to the ground, his eyes glazed over, the sharp pain in his head making it impossible to tell where reality ended and the nightmare began. His mother still stood there, her hands clenched tightly, unmoving, staring at him with a cold, merciless expression. Tuan didn't know what to do, didn't know what to say. The feeling of loss flooded his heart, not just the broken pieces of his memory, but the loss of his family, of his mother, the only constant support in his life. All he could do was kneel, his head lowered, a vague sense of a past he couldn't grasp, a love he couldn't hold on to. Everything felt distant, like clouds far up in the sky, unreachable. He felt an emptiness inside, like a bottomless pit. His mother's words kept echoing in his mind, like a curse that couldn't be undone. Tuan's mother, cold, without hesitation. If you don't leave Lytudiem, I won't let you continue living like this. Lytudiem is not the person I've chosen for you. She's not worthy of you. I've done everything for you, but all you do is throw yourself into meaningless things. She took a step closer. No gentleness in her movement, just a deliberate, forceful stride. Each step she took felt like a heavy mark, irreversible. Tuan felt each step pounding in his chest, each one a scream, a pain he couldn't bear anymore. But he couldn't get up. He couldn't react. Tuan's mother, continuing, her voice more resolute. You still have a chance to start over, Tuan. If you listen to me, if you come back to the family, I will give you everything. But if not, you'll have nothing left. Everything you have will vanish in an instant. And I won't even look at you again. Tuan didn't respond, only lowering his head, his hands gripping his hair, trembling from the headache. He couldn't understand why, couldn't explain why she was doing this. His mother, the one who raised him, why was she treating him like this now? He felt like he was falling into an abyss with no way out, no one to cling to. Tuan's mother, her voice growing sharper, like an accusation. You're no longer my son if you continue living like this. I'll throw you out of this house, throw you out of the company, and everything you've had will turn to nothing. I won't give you a second chance. If you leave Lytudiem, you can come back and I will accept you. But if you choose her, don't expect to find anyone who will accept you anymore. Tuan felt the ground beneath him give way. His mother's words only made him feel more lost, unsure of what was right, what was wrong. He looked at her, his eyes empty, like someone with no hope left. He didn't know what to do, but he knew one thing. If he chose Lytudiem, he would lose everything. If he couldn't let her go, he would have nothing. Tuan's mother, continuing, her tone turning more cutting. Do you think you can live without me? Do you think you can live without family? I've given everything for you, and you can't do this to me. Without Lytudiem, there's no one who can replace me, and you have no right to choose her. She looked at him for a long moment, saying nothing more. Her gaze was deep, devoid of any empathy. Tuan had no strength to resist, no energy to fight back. Everything inside him had shattered, like a picture torn to pieces. Irreparable. Tuan's mother, still with a scornful tone, without hesitation. If you don't listen, I'll send people to deal with you. I won't let you live like this anymore. I've been patient with you for far too long, but not anymore. Tuan sat there, motionless, like a ghost, unable to escape the pain that was tormenting him. Everything around him seemed to be spinning, the walls closing in, the fading memories like shadowy figures dancing in his mind, making him even more exhausted and hurt. Each word, each sentence his mother said still echoed in his head like daggers driving deep into his heart. He couldn't understand. Why was his mother treating him like this? What had he done wrong? The fragile pieces of his memories couldn't connect. Everything was still unclear, with no clear beginning or end. He lowered his head, not knowing what he was searching for, but his heart continued to ache, as if every bit of strength had left him. Tuan felt like he was stuck at a crossroads, unable to go back, unable to move forward. His mother had made it clear, if he didn't give up Lytudiem, he would lose everything. He couldn't imagine living without his family, without his mother, even though he didn't understand why she was doing this to him. Tuan slowly looked up, his eyes full of tears, but he couldn't cry. He felt he didn't have the right to cry, didn't have the right to show this pain. He was no longer his mother's son, no longer the child she could love. He was just a stranger in his own family. Tuan held his head again, as if trying to push away the chaotic thoughts, but they wouldn't let him go. The world around him seemed to grow even more distant. All that remained were images of Lytudiem, moments of happiness when he was with her. He remembered the times they walked under the moonlight, the times they sat and talked about the future. Each of those moments felt like a precious part of his memory, but now they were threatened by the choice he had to make. He loved Lytudiem, but he didn't want to lose his mother. He couldn't leave Lytudiem, but he also couldn't turn his back on his mother. The pain twisted his heart like a vortex he couldn't escape. He couldn't disappoint his mother, but he couldn't live without Lytudiem. He couldn't understand the things his mother had said, but he knew that nothing would change her decision. If he continued to love Lytudiem, she would kick him out of the company, out of the house, and sever all ties between them. He would be left alone in a cold and dark world. Tuan stood up, his legs wobbling, but he tried to keep his balance. He couldn't stay still in this despair. He didn't know what to do, but he couldn't let himself sink into darkness forever. His mother had warned him, and he knew she wouldn't back down. If he didn't let go of Tuan, he would lose everything. But what could he do when his heart still belonged to her? When he couldn't let go of that love?
Tuan stepped out onto the porch, not knowing what he was looking for, just needing some space to breathe. He didn't want to be in that house, didn't want to face his mother, her threats. He couldn't admit that he was weak, but he felt like he didn't have the strength to fight anymore. He was tired, but the worry and fear still weighed heavily on his mind.
He stood there quietly, his gaze drifting toward the distant horizon, where nothing was clear, just a blurry sky and drifting clouds. Everything before him seemed endless. He didn't know where he was going, didn't know what he was going to do, but there was one thing he could feel: the fog and despair taking over his mind.
Tuan looked down at his hands, his fingers trembling, not from the cold, but from the panic inside. He wanted to call out Tuan's name, wanted to tell her that he loved her, that he couldn't live without her. But even if he called her name, he didn't know what would happen. Would she understand him? Would she stay by his side when he was facing this divide?
He lowered his head, his heart tightening. He felt like a boat with no dock, like a person who didn't know where home was, who didn't know what real love was. All he had now was pain, loss, and being lost in a world with no way out. He couldn't go back, but he couldn't move forward either. Everything around him felt meaningless, as if it was all a dream he couldn't escape.
Tuan jolted awake, his body trembling as if he had just gone through a real nightmare. His chest rose and fell rapidly, cold sweat dripping down his forehead and soaking his body. He took a deep breath, trying to grasp some peace, but the chaotic feelings from the dream still lingered, refusing to let him go. His hands rose to wipe away the sweat, trying to shake off the suffocating feeling, but his heart kept pounding, as if it had been pushed into a deep pit with no escape.
He looked around. Everything was calm. Nothing had changed. This wasn't the old house where his mother used to live. This wasn't the place where he had faced her threats. This was his familiar bedroom, the place he had come to every night to escape the pain and confusion. Tuan sat there, his eyes clouded, as if he couldn't believe everything he had just gone through was only a dream.
Tuan placed his hand on his forehead, wondering if he was just too tired, allowing his disordered thoughts to affect his clarity. Every detail of the dream still felt vivid: his mother's cold eyes, her cruel threats, and the deep despair in his heart when he had to choose between family and love. He couldn't shake the feeling, even though he knew it was all just an illusion, a trick of the mind.
He stood up from the bed, his legs a bit unsteady. Not from weakness, but because the swirling emotions hadn't faded. Tuan walked to the window and looked outside. The surroundings were still peaceful, the morning light streaming through the window, creating a warm atmosphere. But he felt cold. That coldness wasn't because of the weather, but from the loneliness and emptiness inside him.
Tuan remembered the dream. In the dream, his mother had come with anger, no mercy. She had slapped him across the face, as if trying to erase everything he had been. Her harsh words were like knives cutting into his heart. She told him he was no longer worthy of being her son if he continued to love Tuan. His mother had even threatened to kick him out of the company, out of the family, if he didn't let go of her. In that dream, he felt something indescribable: despair, loss, and fear so intense it was hard to breathe. His mother, the one he had always respected and loved, had become a stranger in that dream. Her words were like a sentence, undeniable, unanswerable. He felt weak, unable to protect his love, unable to hold on to the things that mattered to him. All he could do was kneel, hold his head, and beg for forgiveness that he knew would never come.
The
the reality Tuan was facing. He turned back to the bed, sat down, his eyes fixed on his hands. His fingers trembled from exhaustion, but not from physical tiredness. He knew he had to face a major decision in his life. But what he couldn't do was view his mother as an enemy. He couldn't give up his love for Tuan, but he also couldn't bear the suffering his mother caused. In the dream, her threat was the only thing that scared him. But in reality, he knew he couldn't give up. He loved Tuan, and that couldn't change. But he couldn't continue living in separation from his mother either. Tuan couldn't erase those thoughts, couldn't forget the things his mother had said in the dream. He stood up, walked to the corner of the room where his phone was placed. He unlocked it and saw a message notification from Tuan. He didn't know why, but a warm feeling rose in his chest when he saw her name. He clicked on the conversation, and it felt like everything was returning to normal. But deep inside, the worry wouldn't let go. He knew what he had to do. Tuan read every message from Tuan, feeling her care and love in each word. He felt the warmth in her messages, but at the same time, anxiety crept in. He couldn't keep living like this. He couldn't keep being torn between two people, between his mother and Tuan. He knew he had to make a decision, even if it was a painful one. Tuan turned off his phone and looked back toward the window. Outside, life continued on, and he knew he couldn't stay trapped in these thoughts forever. He had to face reality, had to confront his choices. But he also understood one thing: no matter what he chose, he could never go back. Love and family would always be two things that couldn't coexist in his life.